The first punch landed like a thunderclap, splitting the air in cell block D. Kai, 24, crumpled against the cold concrete wall. His slender frame no match for the hulking figure looming over him. "Stay down, female," the inmate sneered, his voice dripping with venom, as laughter echoed from the shadows of the California State Prison. Kai wasn't supposed to be here, not in this maximum security hellhole in Sacramento, where men carved their dominance into each other's flesh. He was a poet, a dreamer with soft brown eyes and dreadlocks that framed his face like a crown. But a botched robbery, his desperate attempt to pay for his sister's hospital bills, had landed him a 5-year sentence. The world didn't care that he'd never held a gun before that night. It cared even less that he was transgender, navigating a system that saw him as a man on paper but a target in practice. They called him female from day one. The guards smirked. The inmates leered. Kai learned to keep his head down, to shrink into himself, to make his 5 feet 7 inches frame invisible. But invisibility was a lie in a place where weakness was blood in the water. Every day he woke to the same taunts, the same shoves, the same threats scrawled on his bunk in jagged ink. "You don't belong here." Until Mateo Alvarez, 26, was everything Kai wasn't. Broad-shouldered, fearless, with a reputation that silenced rooms. A former boxer from East Los Angeles, he'd been locked up for 3 years on an assault charge after defending his younger brother from a gang hit. His dark eyes carried a storm, but there was a quiet beneath it, a stillness that made men hesitate to cross him. Mateo didn't speak much, but when he did, his voice was low and steady, like a river carving stone. It was week 6 of Kai's sentence when Mateo first noticed him. Kai was in the chow hall, picking at a tray of gray mush, when a tray slammed down across from him. He flinched, expecting another fight. Instead, Mateo sat, his gaze fixed on Kai like he was studying a puzzle. "You don't eat enough," Mateo said, sliding half his bread across the table. Kai froze, unsure if it was a trick. No one gave anything for free in here. "Why?" Kai's voice was barely a whisper. Mateo shrugged, leaning back. "You look like you need it more than me." That was the start. A slice of bread, a fleeting glance, a moment that shouldn't have meant anything but did. Over the next weeks, Mateo became a shadow at Kai's side. Never too close, never too obvious, but always there. When a guard barked Kai's dead name, Mateo's jaw tightened. When an inmate accidentally tripped Kai in the yard, Mateo's stare sent the man scurrying. He didn't ask for thanks, didn't demand loyalty. He just stayed. Kai didn't trust it. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. He'd learned that the hard way growing up in Oakland, where his father's fists taught him that love could hurt as much as hate. But Mateo was different. He didn't pry, didn't push. He'd sit with Kai in the library, pretending to read while Kai scribbled poems on scraps of paper. Sometimes Mateo would ask to hear one. Kai would hesitate, then read, his voice trembling as he wove words about freedom, about stars, about a world that didn't cage him. Mateo listened like every word was a secret meant just for him. One night, in the dim flicker of the cell block's lights, Mateo broke the rules. Kai was on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, when he heard the soft creak of boots. Mateo stood at the cell door, his silhouette framed by the hallway's glow. "You okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a breath. Kai sat up, heart racing. "You're not supposed to be here." Mateo stepped inside anyway, closing the distance. He didn't touch Kai, didn't speak. He just sat on the edge of the bunk, close enough for Kai to feel the warmth of his presence. You don't have to be alone, Mateo said finally. Not here. Not with me. Kai's throat tightened. He wanted to push Mateo away, to scream that this was a mistake, that caring was a death sentence in a place like this. But when Mateo's hand brushed his, tentative and warm, Kai didn't pull back. For the first time in months he felt seen, not as female, not as a number, but as himself. Their fingers intertwined, a quiet rebellion against the bars around them. The world outside could wait. For now, in the dark, they were enough. The prison's rhythm was relentless. Clanging doors, barked orders, the constant hum of tension. Kai had learned to move through it like a ghost, but Mateo's presence changed the air. It wasn't just his size or his reputation. It was the way he carried himself, like he'd carved out a space in this chaos where fear couldn't touch him. Kai envied that. He wanted to believe he could find that kind of strength, but every taunt, every shove, reminded him how fragile his armor was. Mateo's visits to Kai's cell became a secret ritual. Always after lights out, when the guards were distracted or bribed, Mateo would slip in, his footsteps silent as a cat's. They never spoke much, words felt too heavy, too dangerous, but they'd sit side by side, shoulders brushing, hands finding each other in the dark. It was a language of touch, of stolen glances, of moments that felt like stealing fire from a world that wanted them cold. But secrets don't stay buried in prison. By month 3, whispers spread. Inmates noticed Mateo lingering near Kai, saw the way his eyes softened when Kai spoke. The name female took on a new edge, laced with mockery aimed at both of them. Alvarez got himself a girlfriend. One inmate jeered during yard time, his voice carrying across the basketball court. Kai's stomach twisted, but Mateo didn't flinch. He stepped closer to Kai, his shoulder a shield. "Keep talking," Mateo said, his voice low and sharp. "See what happens." The inmate backed off, but the damage was done. The rumors grew teeth. Kai felt the weight of every stare, every snicker. He wanted to tell Mateo to stop, to stay away, to save himself from the target now painted on his back. But every time he tried, the words caught in his throat. Mateo's presence was a lifeline, and Kai was terrified of letting go. One afternoon, in the library's dusty corner, Kai found a note tucked into his notebook. "Meet me at the old storage shed, 11 p.m. No signature, but he knew Mateo's handwriting, bold, deliberate, like everything else about him. Kai's heart raced. The shed was off limits, a crumbling relic at the edge of the prison grounds where guards rarely patrolled. Going there was a risk, but so was everything about Mateo. That night, Kai waited until the cell block fell silent. He slipped out, heart pounding, navigating the shadows to the shed. The door creaked as he pushed it open, revealing Mateo standing under a sliver of moonlight. "You came," Mateo said, his voice soft but laced with relief. "You thought I wouldn't?" Kai asked, trying to sound braver than he felt. Mateo stepped closer, his breath visible in the chilly air. "I thought you might be smarter than me." Kai laughed, a shaky sound that broke the tension. They sat on the shed's cold floor, surrounded by rusted tools and forgotten crates. For the first time they talked, really talked. Mateo spoke of his brother, Diego, who was now in college, safe from the streets. Kai shared stories of his sister, Aisha, whose cancer was in remission but whose bills still haunted him. They spoke of dreams, Mateo's of opening a gym, Kai's of publishing his poetry. The world outside felt closer, almost possible. Then Mateo reached for Kai's hand, his thumb tracing slow circles over Kai's knuckles. "I don't care what they call you," he said. "I see you, the real you, Kai's eyes burned. He wanted to believe it, but fear clawed at him. "They'll come for you too," he whispered. "Because of me." "Let them try," Mateo said, his voice fierce. "I've fought worse." But the next morning, trouble found them. During breakfast, a group of inmates cornered Kai in the chow hall. Their leader, a scarred man named Vance, leaned in close. "Your boyfriend can't protect you forever," he hissed. Before Kai could react, a tray crashed to the floor. Mateo was there, his fist connecting with Vance's jaw before anyone could blink. Chaos erupted: shouts, fists, guards rushing in with batons. Kai was shoved to the ground, his vision blurring as Mateo was dragged away, blood on his knuckles. "Solitary," a guard barked. Mateo didn't look back, but Kai felt the absence like a wound. For the next week, Kai was alone again. The taunts were louder, the shoves harder. Without Mateo, the prison felt like a cage within a cage. Kai clung to his notebook, writing poems about moonlight and hands that didn't let go. But doubt crept in. Was Mateo's fight worth it? Was Kai worth it? On the 8th day, a guard tossed a folded note into Kai's cell. "I'm okay. Wait for me." Kai's heart leapt. He didn't know how Mateo had gotten the note out of solitary, but it was enough. For now, it had to be. Solitary confinement was a tomb of silence, but Kai imagined Mateo's voice breaking through it. He clung to the note, rereading it until the paper softened under his fingers. The prison's cruelty didn't pause. Taunts followed him to the yard, to the showers, to his bunk. But that note was a spark, a reminder that someone saw him as more than a target. When Mateo returned, he looked different. His eyes were shadowed, his shoulders tense, but his smile when he saw Kai was the same: warm, unguarded, like a sunrise after a long night. They met in the library, a rare moment of quiet. "You good?" Mateo asked, his voice rough from disuse. Kai nodded, though his hands trembled. "You shouldn't have fought for me." Mateo's jaw tightened. "I didn't fight for you. I fought for us." The word "us" hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Kai wanted to hold on to it, but fear was a constant shadow. Vance and his crew hadn't forgotten the chow hall brawl. Their glares followed Kai, promising retribution. Mateo felt it too. He was quieter, more vigilant, his eyes scanning every room they entered. But he never pulled away. If anything, he leaned closer, his presence a quiet defiance. One evening, during a rare movie night in the rec room, Kai and Mateo sat in the back, their knees brushing under the flickering light of an old action flick. The room was loud with jeers and laughter, but for Kai, it was just them. Mateo's hand found his, hidden beneath a folded jacket. "I used to think I'd never feel anything real in here," Mateo whispered. "Then I met you." Kai's heart stuttered. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he squeezed Mateo's hand, letting the touch speak for him. The moment shattered when Vance's voice cut through the noise. "Look at the lovebirds," he sneered, standing with his crew. The room went quiet, all eyes on Kai and Mateo. Kai's pulse raced, but Mateo stood, slow and deliberate, his body a wall between Kai and the threat. "Got something to say, Vance?" Mateo's voice was calm, but his fists were clenched. Vance smirked, stepping closer. "You're not untouchable, Alvarez. Neither's your little girlfriend." The word stung, but Kai stood too, his voice shaking but clear. "My name is Kai." The room held its breath. Vance's smirk faltered, but he recovered quickly, shoving Kai back. Before Mateo could swing, guards stormed in, breaking up the crowd. Kai and Mateo were sent to their cells, the night ending in shouts and slammed doors. But Kai felt a shift. He'd spoken his name, claimed it, and Mateo's proud glance told him it mattered. The next day, a new threat emerged. A guard, Officer Callahan, had taken an interest in their friendship. Callahan was a lean man with cold eyes, known for bending rules for the right price or the right grudge. He cornered Kai in the hallway, his baton tapping against his palm. "You and Alvarez are causing trouble," he said. "Keep it up, and you'll both regret it." Kai didn't tell Mateo. He couldn't bear adding to the weight Mateo already carried. Instead, he wrote, pages filled with poems about courage, about love that burned brighter than fear. He slipped one to Mateo during lunch, a scrap of paper with a single line. "You make me brave." Mateo read it, his eyes softening. "You were always brave," he said. "You just didn't know it." But bravery wasn't enough. That night, Vance's crew ambushed Kai in the showers. 3 against 1, their fists relentless. Kai fought back, swinging wildly, but he was no match. Blood stung his eyes as he hit the tiles, curling into himself. Then, a shout. Mateo's voice, raw with fury. He tore through the attackers like a storm, pulling Kai to safety before the guards arrived. In the infirmary, Kai's ribs ached, but his heart hurt worse. Mateo sat beside him, his hands bandaged from the fight. "I can't keep doing this," Kai whispered. "I'm dragging you down." Mateo's eyes blazed. "You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm right where I want to be." Kai wanted to believe him, but Callahan's warning echoed in his mind. The prison was closing in, and love, no matter how fierce, couldn't break concrete. As Mateo reached for his hand, Kai let himself hold on, but a question lingered. How much could they endure before the walls won? The infirmary's fluorescent lights buzzed like a warning. Kai lay on the stiff cot, his bruises throbbing, while Mateo sat silent, his bandaged hands restless. The air between them was heavy, not with anger, but with the weight of what they couldn't say. Kai wanted to tell Mateo to walk away, to save himself, but the warmth of Mateo's hand in his kept the words locked inside. Callahan's shadow loomed larger each day. The guards' patrols grew more frequent, his eyes lingering on Kai and Mateo with a predator's patience. "You're on thin ice, Alvarez," he'd said during a cell check, his voice low enough to evade the other guards. "Keep playing hero, and you'll both end up in the hole." Mateo's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. Kai knew why. Defying Callahan meant risking more than solitary. It meant losing the fragile space they'd carved out together. Kai's poems became his refuge. He wrote in stolen moments, his pen scratching out lines about love that defied cages, about hands that held tight against the dark. He shared them with Mateo, who read each one like it was a map to Kai's heart. "You make this place feel human," Mateo said once, folding a poem into his pocket. Kai blushed, but the words felt like armor. The prison's tension boiled over during a rainy afternoon in the yard. Vance's crew had been quiet since the shower attack, but their silence was a coiled snake. Kai and Mateo stuck to the edges, avoiding the basketball court where trouble brewed. But trouble found them anyway. Vance approached, flanked by 2 others, his smirk sharp as a blade. "You think you're safe now?" he taunted, eyes on Kai. "Your boyfriend's not always gonna be around." Mateo stepped forward, but Kai grabbed his arm. "Don't," he whispered. "They want you to snap." Vance laughed, loud and cruel. "Listen to your girl, Alvarez. She's smarter than you." Kai's chest burned, but he held Mateo's gaze, pleading silently. Mateo backed down, his fists unclenching, but the fire in his eyes didn't fade. The moment passed, but Callahan was watching from the guard tower, his expression unreadable. That night, Mateo slipped into Kai's cell again. The risk was higher now. Callahan's threats weren't idle, but Mateo didn't care. "I can't stay away," he admitted, his voice raw. "Not when I know what they're doing to you." Kai's heart ached. "You're gonna get hurt," he said. "For me." Mateo leaned closer, his forehead brushing Kai's. "You're worth it." Their lips met, tentative at first, then desperate, like they were stealing time itself. It was their first kiss, a quiet explosion in the dark. For a moment, the prison didn't exist. No bars, no taunts, no Callahan. Just them holding each other like the world could wait. But the world didn't wait. The next morning, Callahan pulled Kai aside during breakfast. "You're causing problems," he said, his baton tapping Kai's shoulder. "Alvarez gets one more strike, and you're both done. Understand?" Kai nodded, fear coiling in his gut. He didn't tell Mateo about the warning. Instead, he tried to pull back, keeping his distance in the chow hall, the library, the yard. Mateo noticed, his eyes narrowing with worry. "What's going on?" he asked one day, cornering Kai by the library shelves. "Nothing," Kai lied, his voice cracking. "Just trying to stay out of trouble." Mateo didn't buy it, but he didn't push. Instead, he slipped Kai a note later that day. "I'm not going anywhere." Kai clutched it like a lifeline, but the fear grew. Callahan wasn't bluffing, and Vance's crew was waiting for their chance. It came during a work detail in the prison's laundry room. Kai was folding sheets when Vance and his crew slipped in, the guard on duty conveniently absent. "No Alvarez to save you now," Vance sneered, grabbing Kai's collar. Kai fought, kicking and clawing, but they were too many. A fist slammed into his stomach, and he gasped, dropping to the floor. Then chaos. Mateo burst through the door, his roar echoing off the walls. He tackled Vance, fists flying, but the crew was ready. They swarmed him, and Kai watched, helpless, as blood stained the concrete. Guards finally stormed in, batons swinging, dragging everyone apart. Callahan was there, his cold eyes gleaming. "Both of you," he barked. "Solitary. Now." As they were pulled away, Kai caught Mateo's gaze. "I'm sorry," Kai mouthed, tears blurring his vision. Mateo shook his head, his expression fierce. "Don't give up," it said. Solitary was a void, but Kai held onto Mateo's look, his poems, their kiss. He didn't know how they'd survive this, but he knew one thing. He wasn't alone anymore. Solitary was a black hole swallowing time and sound. Kai sat on the cold floor, his back against the wall, tracing Mateo's note in his mind. "I'm not going anywhere." The words kept him alive, but they couldn't erase the guilt. Mateo was in this mess because of him. Kai's bruises faded, but the ache in his chest grew, fed by the fear that their love was a flame too bright for this place. When they were released 10 days later, the prison felt different. The air was thicker, the stairs sharper. Callahan's presence was everywhere, his baton tapping a constant threat. Vance's crew kept their distance, nursing their own wounds from the laundry room fight, but their hatred simmered. Kai and Mateo were marked now, not just by inmates but by the system itself. They met in the library, their old sanctuary. Mateo's face was gaunt, his eyes carrying the weight of solitary, but he smiled when he saw Kai. "Told you I'd be here," he said, his voice soft but steady. Kai's throat tightened. "I thought I'd lose you." Mateo reached for his hand, hidden behind a stack of books. You won't. But Callahan had other plans. That afternoon, he called Kai and Mateo to the warden's office. The warden, a tired man named Ellis, sat behind a cluttered desk, his eyes flicking between them. Callahan stood by the door, arms crossed. You two are a problem, Ellis said. Fights, disruptions, rumors. I'm transferring one of you to another facility. Kai's heart stopped. Mateo's hand tightened on his, out of sight. You can't, Mateo said, his voice calm but edged with steel. We haven't done anything wrong. Ellis sighed. You've done enough to make my life harder. Alvarez, you're out. Pelican Bay, next week. Kai felt the world tilt. Pelican Bay was a nightmare. A prison where men like Mateo, strong, defiant, were broken. He wanted to scream, to beg, but Mateo spoke first. Send me, he said, but let Kai stay. He doesn't deserve this. Ellis raised an eyebrow. Callahan smirked. Done, Ellis said. Pack your things, Alvarez. Outside, Kai grabbed Mateo's arm, his voice breaking. Why did you do that? You can't go there. Mateo cupped Kai's face, his touch gentle but firm. Because you're getting out in 2 years. I've got 4. You'll make it. You'll write your poems, help your sister, live your life. I'll be okay. Kai shook his head, tears falling. I can't do this without you. You can, Mateo said. And I'll find you, I promise. The week before Mateo's transfer was a blur of stolen moments. They met in the shed, the library, the shadows of the yard, holding each other like the world was ending. Kai gave Mateo his notebook, filled with poems about them, about love that outlasted bars. Mateo gave Kai a braided bracelet, made from threads pulled from his uniform. So you don't forget me, he said, half smiling. The night before Mateo left, they broke every rule. Mateo slipped into Kai's cell, and they lay together on the narrow bunk, hands clasped, hearts racing. I love you, Kai whispered, the words spilling out like a prayer. I love you too, Mateo said, his voice a vow. They held each other until dawn, when the guards came. Mateo's transfer was quiet, a van pulling away under a gray sky. Kai stood in the yard, the bracelet tight around his wrist, feeling the emptiness like a physical ache. But something had shifted inside him. He wasn't female anymore. He was Kai, poet, survivor, loved. 2 years later, Kai walked out of prison, his notebook clutched to his chest. He moved to San Francisco, published his poems, and started a support group for trans inmates. Every night, he wrote to Mateo, letters filled with hope, sent to Pelican Bay. Mateo's replies were sporadic but steady, each one ending with, I'm still here. On a warm September evening, Kai stood outside a community center, reading his poetry to a small crowd. As he finished, a familiar voice called his name. He turned, and there was Mateo, older, leaner, but with the same storm in his eyes. They ran to each other, colliding in a hug that felt like coming home. They tried to break us, Mateo whispered, his hand finding Kai's. They failed. Kai smiled, tears streaming. We're free. Under the sunset, they held hands. No rules to break, no walls to climb. Just them, together, writing a new chapter in a world that couldn't cage their love.